Yeah. Prep time is almost over. So yeah.
It's 4:40. So
yeah. We're gonna be starting the grand final soon.
Zobayer has to join us first.
Is he still giving feedback in room 1-1?
Let me check. No.
Yeah.
No, he is. Let me join them.
Oh, can I just go get him? Cool. I will get the teams.
It's 4:40.
So yeah. We're gonna be starting the grand final soon.
Zobayer has to join.
Is he still giving feedback?
Yeah, closing opposition is here.
Opening opposition is here.
We're here.
Is FBDA here? Hello teams, could you give your attendance?
Closing opposition is here, which is IBADU 1.
কারণ এটা একটা আনএক্সপেক্টেড জিনিস এই বোর্ডগুলো দেখতেছে বাট সিরিয়াসলি ম্যান মানে কোনো কাম নাই
Opening opposition, IBADU 2 is here.
So only OG's left, right? Zobayer is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Teams, remember to ask the POI in the grand auditorium. Tech chat. Zobayer is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Teams, remember to ask the POI in the grand auditorium. Tech chat. Isn't FBDA 1 Tamina Akhtar and Wasim Akhtar? No, they're both in the room. They're just ignoring. I tagged them in the text chat, so they should be able to at least get.
Can't you drag them here?
They're in the room, but they're not responding. Isn't FBDA 1 Tamina Akhtar and Wasim Akhtar? No,
I guess a simple line of question. Where do you ask POIs in this?
Grand auditorium text channel. So I'll give you the link at general. Grand auditorium. Now go to general and just tag grand auditorium. So they should be automatically go to grand auditorium.
Can't you drag them here?
We'll take you there.
Thank you, Abrar.
Anytime.
CUFBD is here.
Okay, so both speakers from CUFBD are here. Saying that, I call this house to order. I'll be chairing this round. My name is Abrar Zaman from ULAB, and along with me in the panel are Zobayer Ahmed from IUB. You may know him as the UADC champion, and Kazi Fardeen Ishraq from Scholastica Mirpur, who is in the WSCC team for the next Sri Lanka one. That being said, I invite the Prime Minister to start the debate. Here. Prime Minister, are you there?
Yeah. Here. Just starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, before
preferring a world where current generation lives forever at a cost of any future generation being born, we need to understand what current generation is doing in current world. Generations is always in a rush. They think that, okay, whatever I have to do it very very quickly, and I have to do it within my lifetime. And they think that that always my decisions are not the consequences of my decisions are not always going to be consumed by myself. Rather, my next generation is going to consume. Sometimes they care about it, but sometimes they don't care about it. How so? Because first of all, understand this, ladies and gentlemen, we believe principally these individuals who are always in rush is essentially harmful for that individual, because that rush creates an barrier to the full satisfied to that individual's life. How so? Because first of all, that individual's life should be only focused upon himself, which makes him happier, which makes him enjoy his life to fully lead his own life. But understand this rush, always thinking about the next generation, is essentially creating this rush, and individuals is going to be in a dissatisfied way and leading way of life. We believe is essentially harmful for the current generations and every generation that born after that, because this rush always transfers from generations to generations, and we believe from the individual's perspective this is harmful. But moreover, in a very open ground, we believe current world has also some other problems, because most of the time we have seen that the current generations most of the time don't think about that, okay, whatever my decisions are, whatever policies are being taken by me is whether it affects me or not. For example, if current generations is taking any policies regarding any economic benefits or social benefits, they think about the immediate benefits that affects me or not. In the cost of it, doesn't want to think about whether it is actually harming my future generations or not. And maybe some do, but most of the time we see that we care more to the immediate benefits than to the later harms. For example, whenever in a capitalist world, we always rush for the economic benefit, and we want to ensure the more economic benefit, because that affects us more immediately, no matter how it destroys our environment, no matter how my resources are being constrained to my next generation, how my next generation is going to suffer. They don't think about it. Even if they think about it, we don't see that this world have much being disastrous in that situation. We believe whenever we are preferring the current generation lives forever at a cost of any future generations being born, two things happen. First of all, these current generations are forced to think about their own environment, are forced to think about their current scenario, immediate benefit along with that future benefit, because in future they are the consumer, they are going to suffer it, they are going to think about it, and we believe that is the incentive of current generation to think twice before destroying anything like environment or on the social stability or anything else. We believe this world ensures better peace, this world ensures better happiness, this world ensures better satisfactions among individuals and among current generations. Third of all, ladies and gentlemen, but okay, before that, any PY? Okay, I guess no. Okay, third of all, ladies and gentlemen, understand this, why from the perspectives of the resource we think that this world is more preferable. Because first of all, understand this, when an individual think that, okay, I'm not gonna live forever, that means he is actually forever and know about it. But along with this, the society have utilized some resources to make an individual skilled enough, to be experienced enough, and to be efficient enough. But along with, but when that individual dies and think about the future generation, we believe all the experience, all the skills, and the efficiency gone with it, and that society have to utilize more resources to make level, the same level of efficiency of an individual who is dead, you have to utilize more resources. We believe in that scenario, we have to, where the society has limited resources, the utilizations of resources should be in that way that maximizes the output. But whenever we always are in thinking of future generations, and every generations after that, society or the plant has to utilize more and more resources to make same level of efficient and the same level of experience, the same level of skilled people. This is essentially harmful for the perspectives of our world, because now the resources are constant. That means after a certain period of time, the future generation, one generation will not get that amount of resources. One generations will not get that much of scopes to be efficient enough. We believe this is harmful for the entire generations and also harmful for the next generations of that generation. We believe in our world it is preferable the current generation lives forever, where the limited resources will be used to make an individual to efficient enough and to make reach him into the optimum level. And we believe in that man always that individual will strive for the better, because now he is living for his own life, not for the future generation. We believe that individuals have more incentive to reduce the destructions of the earth, to reduce the destructions of the society, and also to increase the innovations. How so? On the fourth level, understand from the ground innovations is that we believe to whenever the individuals is facing some problem, that individuals have more incentive to innovate to reduce the problem that he is facing. We believe in our world the innovations to reduce our problems will be more and more, because at the end of the day the benefits will be consumed by us. For all those reasons, we have so far showed that the freedom of individuals and the less destructions of the current world and the minimum resource utilizations happens and more innovations happens in our world. That's why we're proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your contribution. I now invite the Leader of Opposition to start the negative case. Here. Leader of Opposition, are you there?
Give me 10 seconds, please.
You have your 10 seconds.
Thank you. Right, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Current world is hard. Current world is fast. Current world is rushed. So rather the current world sit back, enjoy a margarita through the infinite passage of time, while future generations are never born, and somehow that makes the current generation automatically liable to become the most economic, efficient, yet however at the same time the most relaxed individual. Ladies and gentlemen, today we at Side Opposition come up and tell you that the entire government case is based on a very, very one-dimensional thinking and a complete lack of understanding of human psychology. Ladies and gentlemen, to start off with, so they're always like how individuals of the current world are in a constant state of rush. So they actively have no time or no place to enjoy the fruits of their own labors. Understand that exactly how will the infinite passage of time through your immortal life, exactly how will that provide more satisfaction? Any individual who has gone on any long stretch of time without an active end, without an active goal in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that individual inevitably, as a human being, procrastinates. That individual slows down. Their effort and incentive all slows down in terms of everything. Ladies and gentlemen, today we at Side Opposition will tell you exactly why. So understand that how house governments endless life somehow gives you incentives to care more about your actions, because after all, you are the one who will face the consequences of your actions. Understand that that is not exactly how human beings think, because immortal life is something that will essentially make you numb to consequence. Ladies and gentlemen, when death is out of the equation. Now, exactly how does this happen? Today, our burden of the House is to prove that how prioritizing the present over the contributions to the future will be automatically, on a principle and economic level, be devastating for the world at hand. Understand that Understand that provided that the current generation stops aging, stops dying, just stops at their stage of life that they are, that they eventually go on to live forever, to live an immortal life. Understand that we acknowledge here that while the passage of time may ultimately give you more new experiences, we believe that there are only certain levels of psychology, there are certain thoughts and ideas that only happen, that can only be brought about through current generations. Ladies and gentlemen, understand that had the generation which lived during the 18th century, had that generation lived forever at the cost of our lives, that would be a generation which ultimately would have had completely different views on topics such as homosexual rights, on topics such as racial equality, on topics such as the Black Civil Rights Movement, on topics such as females voting, on topics such as economy, politics, racism. Understand that inevitably our current generation will reach a mental block. Exactly how does that so? Because it currently so happens there is an active block that generates, perhaps years and years. Perhaps it could happen in 20 years, perhaps in 200. It will inevitably exist. That is precisely why people in Galileo's era could not comprehend the concept of a helicopter and how Galileo himself may have imagined it, but he never had the technology to build it, precisely because his generation came centuries too early, because he was born centuries too early, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, the idea of exactly what this implies is follows. That is precisely because there are only certain thoughts which through the passage of time change. And exactly how does that change? A lot of this depends on seeing and experiencing the consequences, and to ultimately see the consequences of such an end. The end of a summer vacation, the end of a life, the end of a long trip where you did nothing. Understand that the idea of goal, the idea of finality is ultimately something that actively teaches you. We believe that the current generation will face a state of stagnancy, ladies and gentlemen. They will face a state of stagnancy where not only will they be technologically reach an upper limit, but mentally they will reach an upper limit, precisely because they will think that all the rights to and all that everything to be invented, everything to be taught has already been taught. Now, understand that the current generation's economic and will be prioritized over that of the future generations. Now, understand that exactly what is so principally wrong with this. When you ultimately prioritize the contributions of one generation over another, you are ultimately saying that somehow you as an individual, as a generation, are ultimately more valuable to humanity's progress than any other generation is. No, ladies and gentlemen, time, experience, and learning. All that happens precisely because human beings have the finality of death to look forward to. All that happens precisely because humans are in a rush. They know that my time on earth is limited, so ultimately I have to make the most of it, ladies and gentlemen. And that is a more pressing incentive than thinking that you have an infinite amount of time to do everything. When you have an infinite amount of time, your level of incentives leave you. When you have a 14-day deadline to complete an assignment, and when you have a 5-minute deadline to complete the assignment, you will ultimately be a more productive worker, a smarter individual, and a more efficient economically individual in addressing exactly how you utilize your limited time, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, as for incentives to make you care about your actions and how somehow the thought of current generations never being born understand that ultimately, because of the finality of life, people have different expectations. I do not want an individual would not want their children to suffer the same things that they suffered through, ladies and gentlemen. An individual has different expectations of what they currently face, of the situation they currently face, and the situation they would want their children to face, the world that they would like their children to be brought up in, the world that they would ultimately want their children to be brought up in. That is precisely what stops people from completely destroying the earth through climate change, from complete degrading our natural resources, precisely because you want a better world, a greener world for the future generation, which inside government's house today will never be born because of their skewed up notion that somehow the current generation's upper limit is infinite. And we at side opposition today are proud to oppose, because we believe that time and learning and experience are in essence something that goes hand in hand with depth. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for your contribution to this debate. I now invite the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the affirmative case. Here.
Hello.
Hello, you are audible.
Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. If we can prove in this debate that immortality of this current generation is going to make this world a beautiful world, as well as increasing the satisfaction of humanity, we are going to take this debate. I'm exactly fulfilling that responsibility. Three things in my speech. Firstly, why individual wants death, which is like why they like next generation or have affection for next generation. Secondly, how we are going to ensure the individuals like freedom and how it increases the life satisfaction. And lastly, how the whole world is going to get the benefit. But before that, some rebuttal first. Firstly, what they told us there is a mental blockage of those individuals. They are obsolete. They don't have any sort of capacity to use technology. They don't want social change, like accepting the people who should be accepted. For example, minority group like LGBT community. Recognize the fact why the new generation basically more likely to have change in those sort of sectors. Why? Because the reason that is in new generation or young people have enough amount of time in from after birth to 25 years, they don't have that types of rush at the very first place to think about those sort of things. They have an ample amount of time to slowly think what is the problem into the society. The problem is that in this current world, that whenever the individual we are talking about, who they told us going to be obsolete, they become obsolete because they don't have any sort of time to think at the end of the day. Why so? Because they have the fear of death and have the rush to secure the next generation, which means they are less likely to think about those social problems. They are less likely to understand that how a technology works. What they basically do is to more likely to concentrate or ready-made idea that their previous generation given or injected into them, because thinking takes time and they don't have enough amount of time to bring those sort of social change. What does that mean is that as individuals have much more freedom under our side of this house, they have more time to think about those social change. And we believe that is much more important, because under their side of this house, people thinking for a certain age, then what they do is stop thinking, stop learning. Under our side, because they have rush. And that is why next generation after generation, the acceleration of changing, social change is very much low. Under our side, whenever you have huge amount of time, no matter what happens, you can think about those sort of social change without any sort of interruption of time, without having any sort of next generation continuous thinking. Which means under our side, those types of social change are more likely to come. Learning of those technologies are more likely to come. Firstly, why those individuals basically want the next generation, or why they have the love for next generation. People want next generation because they think that my legacy should continue. People think that, okay, like I love next generation because my value should be continued at the very first place. Why is that problematic? And that is why people want to give birth of next generation. They think whenever someone is born in their family, they think, okay, my legacy has been secured at the very first place. Under our side of this house, you don't have to think about your continuous legacy and continuous value, because you yourself is the legacy of your family. What is going to happen is that in that point of moment, people will be less likely to feel urgency to find happiness into next generation at the very first place. Secondly, how this is going to why people basically wants dead. People basically wants to be dead because they cannot compete with next generation. They feels like they are advanced. I'm physically weakening day by day. I cannot compete. And which means for my exit, I am less likely to be exist. Which means it's time to give a scope to next generation. Those types of mental pressure has been created into those people. That is why people want death. But under our side of this house, people are less likely to want that, because at the end of the day, people will not have any sort of next generation. Secondly, how this is going to give individual more satisfaction in their personal life. Because the fact they would not have any sort of rush, which means they can achieve whatever they want in their life without rushing. They can invest time what they are like. For example, someone want to be artist, but their family don't want them because you need to secure your next generation and your life. We believe under our side, individuals have ample amount of time to lead their life by their own way at the end of the day. Secondly, under our side of this house, people have ample amount of time, which means the alternative to the people to exploring the world, the alternative for people to invest to execute their idea, the alternatives to have access to different opportunities are more likely to open to those individuals, which means the mentality of the people which means people have much more satisfaction under our side of this house. Those are the points from individual perspective. Now let's go from social perspective. What Tamanna told you that whenever you are an individual who is going to live for a long period of time, the incentive to secure this world, make this world much more beautiful, increases at the very first place. Recognize the fact whenever generation after generations are coming, where majority of the people prioritize the immediate benefit and their own benefit, in that point of moment, generation after generations are suffering. Total as a human being, the generation and human being are suffering at the very first place because of the burden that their previous ancestor has given on them. What happens under our side of this house, as an individual, you are more likely to have incentive to secure or make this world much more beautiful. For example, protecting the environment, all those sort of things. That is how, as a total human being, the world is going to be a much more better world. Maybe next generation who is getting fruit, but at least a generation, which is current generation, is getting the fruit. Under their world, no generation is getting the fruit of a beautiful world. We believe that is much more important under our side of this house. Lastly, the innovation, how that is not going to just because of there is no new generation. Let's talk about how innovation basically works. Innovation happens whenever individuals are facing problems. The next generation are much more likely to innovate because they are facing new problem. Which means if current generation is going to live the life of next generation, they are also going to face the same problem. Which means they are also trying to solve the problem and going to have innovation. Tamanna told you how efficiency and social capital, which increases the efficiency of an individual, are more likely to be not to be wasted rather than used efficiently to that individual. Which means we believe we have covered both the individual perspective, which is how the life satisfaction are going to increase and dissatisfaction reduce, and how this world is going to be much more better world in a cost-effective way by these types of decisions. We have that, and we believe we should take this debate.
Thank you, sir, for your contribution. I now invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue and build upon the negative case.
Can I have 10 seconds to time myself?
Yes, you have your 10 seconds.
Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, okay. So I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen the government side's lack of understanding actually we have seen them talk about how this rush actually incentivizes them to create change, this illusion of change. But we the opposite side have said that how this rush actually is not the thing that actually is actually the thing that that creates the change itself. The government side says that relaxation is the thing that actually gonna give the people the time to bring about the change that they need in the world. But we at the opposite side have said how this actually leads to procrastination. Secondly, the government side's perspective on how the human behavior works is flawed, because they feel like the consequences will actually bring about their own change by themselves. We find that the lack of hindsight that the generation will actually bring upon them the doom, because the lack of stagnancy, because of stagnancy and how there's gonna be a limit to their development is gonna in the future be their own barrier. So we have seen right now that how the side of the current generation will lead to future problems. Thirdly, they have completely misrepresented how actually time works. Imagine in a week, you basically prioritize what you have to do first. So this lack of time is what actually incentivizes you to get something done. So that is why we make most of our time. So when we have an abundance of time, we will actually lose that lack of prioritization and do more harm than. The second speaker of the government talks about how innovation actually is going to be brought about by this current generation. But ladies and gentlemen, innovation comes through change, and there is going to be no change when there is going to be no sort of variable. These are going to be the same people, the same people throughout the history of time. Okay, now let's move on to our side of the house is constructive. So let's say hypothetically this sort of natural thing might occur where you can actually live forever. But let's be a little bit realistic in a sense. So for example, a person actually might die because, for example, they fell off a building and they actually died. Even though they had the ability to live forever, they actually died. So instances like this will actually carry on throughout the history of time. Human beings will be extinct. Not because of external factors, like the sun taking the earth in as a whole, but by their own mistakes. For example, and also real life, this sort of current generation living on forever will be tremendous. Industries will fall. Industries like healthcare, industries like childcare. Even when we talk about crimes being committed by the society, there will be no accountability. When someone does a crime, like a severe crime, and they are sentenced to life in prison, this thing actually means their entire life as a whole, till death, which does not actually exist. This person will actually technically be living on as a whole. So we believe that the government actually, we believe that that current generation living work because nature doesn't work like that. Nature didn't create a nature will eventually bite us back. So let's talk about how life ceases to exist without death being part of the equation. No death the part of the equation, there is no rush, and without that rush there is no incentive to do other stuff. And when there are future generations, there is not going to be a different perspective which is going to bring about change, which our first speaker has brought about a lot of times through instances of history. For example, let's imagine this current motion is being brought about in the 18th century, before slavery was even banned. Imagine this sort of people don't actually know why slavery is wrong, and this thing will carry on for the history of time, because there is going to be no sort of accountability, there's no sort of future generation to tell them that this is actually wrong. Imagine we're in the 15th century where so much huge stuff has not been created in the future. So the lack of future generations will actually keep these people in this period of time, and there will be no technological advancement, which the opposite side's first speaker has told us about how the psychology and ideas will be inhibited upon by the current generation. Lastly, we have talked about the implication, the real life implication. To what's gonna happen is not actually gonna be to what's gonna happen is not actually gonna is actually gonna be the destruction that the human beings will bring about themselves. Trying to do the same thing over. At one point, we will eventually be, and at that point, life will cease to exist. So life without death is actually no life at all. So by that, I would like to rest my case. And we believe that the opposition side wins the argument because of these certain reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader Opposition. With that speech, we now move on from the upper house debate to the lower house debate. And I invite the member of government or the extension speaker to extend upon the debate. Here.
Ghost, I'm audible and clear, right?
Yes, sir, you are, but could you give me a second? One of the debaters is experiencing difficulties in hearing another.
Oh, okay.
Is A or is she able to hear Sriranja?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I was just being unable to hear Aziz continuously. I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Can you hear Srijan Podal from Nepal?
Yeah, I could hear him. I could hear him clearly when he was asked.
Was I not audible? I'm really sorry for that.
No, you were audible, but it was breaking up at points for me. But it was audible for everyone else, I guess. So.
All right. That being said, I now invite Srijan Podal, the member of government, to do the speech. Yeah.
I'll be starting in 3 seconds. Panel, it's incredibly important to understand what death does to life. It makes people committed or limited to a time in which they can attain limited potential, limitations in things, with the fear of death hanging over their shoulders that is going to make them do things that they do not actually want, reducing the ultimate amount of individual happiness, and that is the thing that we stand for. So before that, I like to go, before constructing on my own, I like to go to the case brought about by opposition side. They talk about like when there is no active goal, an individual is going to procrastinate and slow himself down. If an individual feels that his life is going to go on, is not going to go on forever, then he's going to likely to procrastinate. We say that kind of agency is going to be present for, is better be presented to that kind of individual, because that is also subjugant to the feeling of happiness that he processes. Also, we say that procrastination is not necessarily bad, and also notice that competition still exists, meaning that there are people who are again going to compete in the long run. That is to mean this individual cannot procrastinate forever. That is why human beings are, again, this is on contingent on human beings being emotional actors. We say that is not necessarily true all of the time. Okay, the most important thing that was brought forward by opposition is that end of things is going to build consequences. There is not going to be finality, there is not going to be variables, and that's going to cause stagnancy. We say that is not going to be true, because I will die, but I will not die, but the world is still changing. The environment around me is changing. The society that I live around is changing, and entropy is increasing with time. Because from years too long, our discoveries of mystery is only making us find there are more mysteries in generation. We say we give this agency of exploration for this individual so that we can reach out the extent of human potential, and there is still going to be more, because there are infinite number of variables and we live in an infinite universe. So before proceeding, they talk about why these people in Galileo's era were born centuries too early. We say, had Galileo lived infinitely, human innovation would be in proportion to his level, and that is why it would be far better world on our side of the house. So what are we bringing to you exclusively? We say the problem that people have presently is because they cannot prioritize things, because there is death hanging on their shoulders, because they have to give birth to the children, and then that is going to go on their immediate forces. That is why they cannot plan for things. We say in our world, people can plan for sustenance rather than immediate gain, and that's they are going to find sustainable jobs and focus, which leads to constant fulfillment on our side of the house. Again, people sacrifice a lot for having a lot of money at old age and then living happily. That is to mean their entirety of youth is focused on that particular purpose. In our side, we leave them, we give them an area where they can exercise their passion, because we say we measure people's happiness in proportion to the health, wealth, and love that they're going to attain in that time of life. We say that having infinite amount of time in their life is going to make them focused on this love aspect as well, meaning that they have more time to give to the family, and rather than just economic prospects that this world wants to enjoy. We say this time is going to be extensively more because now they do not have this burden of getting a lot of money because they go old and die, because that is not going to happen. Also, there is one thing that is prospective time. When one has infinite time in the world, he is more likely to explore religion, explore culture, and things as such. That is to mean he is going to be less intolerant towards the culture. How so? They talk about people's perceptual biases rigidifying, which is that is not going to come true because he has to live in the same society as these individuals forever. That is to mean he is more likely to be receptive to these individuals if he wants to live long. That is why this individual is going to be less and less intolerant towards the culture, acceptant of it, because he has a lot of time to explore every religion, every culture, because we know that every culture has a thing of beauty, a thing of uniqueness that this individual can go on forever perpetuating. Third thing we are going to talk about is the extent of human potential that is going to reach. The agencies of research, like let's say Albert Einstein tried to do a research for a long time, but his son or daughter did not follow along that line. We say every research is preconditioned on what has been achieved to that point, right? When an individual is unable to follow from that, we say the human development is halted in the prospect of generation. One generation is contained with some kind of human generation, which the next generation cannot follow. That is why when that individual has that focused line of thinking, we say this individual can extend the human potential, maximize the happiness for all individuals through human achievement and innovation, because the intelligence that this individual has and the capacity to give will perpetuate the time eternity, and that is not going to do. Again, it takes a lot of time for the children to be brought into that kind of world and become information, given knowledge, and then develop on there. It's a lot amount of pressure that these individuals are going to have. Now, next point we bring it to you, and why people are more likely to give rather than just prosper for individual happiness. We say he does not necessarily need to collect for the future because his sustenance is more important than collecting for one particular time in future. That is not the end of his life. We say fear of death pushes people to do crimes. We realize war. Also, we realize war in terms of its contrast. That's to my individual life is only going to be valuable when there is death in there. When that is not, there is no death there, I stop valuing my individual life, but I start valuing why my life has to meaningfully perpetuate to eternity. That is to mean in the society that I live in, I am less likely to be harmful or toxic to another individual. I'm more likely to be accept him of his behaviors, more likely to be a part of society and give back to it. That is to mean an individual is going to be more giving, more fulfilling. That is again benefiting the individuals who are the receiving end, also benefiting me because it gives me a sense of fulfillment and a sense of spirituality. That is to mean when I have infinite amount of time, I can focus my mind and things into things actually generating me emotional and spiritual happiness that the other world can never provide, because there is only a pursuit of materialistic pleasures in their side of the house, which does not exist in my side because I'm more focused on spiritual things, because material pleasures do not mean a lot. So we say that they have formed beliefs and all conceptions, which is more likely to evolve because we are going to live a lot of time, right? Also notice that the long-term problems or global issues like environmental problems and other problems that are going to affect the future generations are now suddenly become more personal. That is to mean even if I don't die, I'm going to suffer the consequences. I'm more likely to opt into the problems to solve this kind of agencies in the long run. What did we hear from opening opposition? They talked about they talked about why these problems. They talked about the homosexual rights and things as such. We say that these people are going to be radical and unmoving in their side of the house, but in the outside, world society is going to be liberalized because people, after their perceptions are liberalized, are not going to die in that point in time. We say that the indoctrination. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is innovation comes through change, and they say that they have no variable, but we have proven to you that only mysteries are going to be brought on forever, and that is why we are going to liberate on our own, and this liberation does not halt after generation. We are very proud to propose.
Thank you, sir, for your speech. I now invite the opposition extension speaker to continue the debate from opposite.
Can I get like 10 seconds?
Sure.
Starting. Honorable Speaker, understand the question or the metric that we have to judge this debate on is whether the current world that we live in right now is the best possible version of our world, and whether is this the best the human race can possibly get. If we can prove to you from closing opposition that it isn't, and we think that it makes no sense for the current generation to live forever if it isn't, and we'll show you why. Because we, as human beings, inherently and psychologically need to know that we can always get better. We need to know that we can get better and improve ourselves. And we as human beings are never happy and constantly feel the need to be better psychologically, emotionally, and physically in this world. That is a trait that human beings always have naturally. Some rebuttals to opening opposition, opening government, closing government, and my other rebuttals are in my constructive. So like they talk about the current generation being in a rush. We completely agree that the current world is in a rush in the sense that they know that they are not going to live forever and they have a lifespan. Understand, when we know that we will live forever, we know that we will never die, and it's extremely harmful for us as human beings. Why? Because this knowledge that we are not going to live forever and will die at some point is what motivates us from our very childhood, and is what makes us go through every part, helps us through every part of our lives and motivates us through every part of our lives. O talks about future generations will suffer from our current actions. They see that they will care about our world more when we know that we will live forever, and this is the world that we all have. But understand, this isn't really true, and it's actually harmful for these individuals. We take our world for granted, as we do right now, because most people want immediate benefits at the cost of like environmental harm. We're still causing environmental harm, and like most people aren't that far-sighted, as the opening government has said, that most people don't really realize the future consequences. Given that's the case, and if we know that we will live forever, we are still likely to do that as human beings. We are still likely to go for immediate benefits and like immediate pleasures, because that is how we're designed as human beings. We are also like even if in our world we are intelligent beings, that means we are intelligent enough to take steps to ensure the future generations can be better off. So like the entire arguments about like resources being diminished, environmental harming the future generations isn't really that that solid, because like we are intelligent beings, and it's like undermining human race to think that we can like take care of our future generations. We don't care about them, but also like we will still keep harming our environment even if we start think that we will live forever. Even though environment will be changing, as the closing government has said, the ideas, mindsets, and the perception of people that we currently have will still be same and stagnant, right? Which means that it is that our culture, society won't really grow, because we have decided that this is the best version of ourselves. We have decided that our current ideas are the best it can get. So, and these are the perfect ones, which means that there will be no growth in our culture. There will be no like change in our society, because we have decided that this is the best version of ourselves. Thus, we won't evolve as individuals and will not grow as individuals. We as the human race are what we are because we have evolved, because we have learned from our mistakes. We screwed up a lot across generations and still do, but our world only keeps getting better because we have the past to learn from. We have learned from our previous mistakes, and we don't think that we are the best version of ourselves. Why? Because even if our current world is far more progressive and far more liberal but there are still many problems. There are systematical problems of poverty, crime, etc. And given that these problems do exist, we do not think that the current world that we live in is perfect. We think these problems can be solved one day, and we are optimistic. Why? Because we as human beings continuously evolve, and we think that we will be better and than what we were currently or 10 or 100 years ago. What we're telling you is that we only evolve because we try to be better. The moment in time we choose not to evolve, the entire like human race improvement goes away. We will not have the desire to be better, and that is very harmful. But more importantly, what gives us the right to decide that we won't bring in any more individuals? Just like our parents have this responsibility to continue our race, we have this innate responsibility to continue our race. That is the only time we can actually be allowed to actually consider stop continuing our race might be when we know that we cannot get any better, or we are living in the perfect world. But that is clearly not the case, as I've told you. Thus, as human beings, we have a duty to continue our race and ensure that we continue the cycle of making our life better and making our making the most of our lifespan. Because let's tell you how it exactly happens when you live forever. You don't like have the motivation to grow as individuals. We think it affects our emotional relationships as well, and which is something that exclusively comes from us. We think that we know that we will die one day, and everyone will eventually die one day. We know our parents will one day leave, for example, and we value our relationships more with each other. We get to know each other and enjoy every moment that we spend with each other, because we know that we might not get that in the future. This emotional relationship is an integral part of our lives. That is what gives us happiness. That is what keeps us going. Now, when you take that away, we will take people that we know for granted. We'll take the relationships that we know for granted. We won't value them as much because we know that we will live forever. We can always make new relationships and make new connections. We will feel that same spiritual happiness when we connect with someone and gain that same happiness, which is incredibly important for human beings. Religions exist because we have an afterlife. We think that we have an afterlife that keeps our moral compass in check. When that happens, when we know that we have no accountability to keep our moral compass in check and we will have no consequences for our lives, we are far more likely to be more selfish and to not care about our social and moral values that has kept the human race to be functioning together, functioning this well, because we know that we have no accountability towards the future generations, and that is incredibly harmful. So we tell you that from our basic childhood, we get educated because we know that we have to be better and we have to be really good when we grow up. As we grow up, we get jobs because we don't want to be homeless in our 40s or 50s. We get married because we don't want to live alone in our 60s and 70s. We don't want to miss out on meaningful relationships. And this is what keeps us going. This interpersonal relationships, this happiness that we gain from it, this happiness that we gain from achieving success in our lives is something that's incredibly important, and that gives the human beings extreme happiness. We think that we take that away. On a comparative, in their world, we won't necessarily procrastinate, but that urgency to grow goes away. That urgency to be better, that urgency to value what we have right now and to live in the moment goes away. And that deeply affects human beings on a very psychological level. We think that is far more important than any monetary or financial benefit that we can get, because that desire and feeling of spiritual happiness and spiritual success and making the most of our life goes away in their world. We think that is extremely harmful. We don't want to live in a world like that. We want to continuously evolve. We want to continuously grow. We want to continuously keep making our race better. And we think for those very reasons, we're very proud to oppose.
Thank you, sir. I now invite the government whip to make the last government speech of the House.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, okay, I'll speak again. We are born to a world of not our choosing, and we are born to a society where we're constantly indoctrinated by society in certain ways, and we are never allowed to explore. And after being born to this world, we are forced to struggle throughout our life, and in the end, we achieve no result, meaning that the fruits of our struggles can never be received by ourselves, right? So understand, in the current status quo, a woman who's born in a patriarchal society is condemned to live in a patriarchal society and die there. A homosexual born to a homophobic society is condemned to struggle throughout his life and not see any change in society. And even if he sees a certain amount of change, that change is not going to last his lifetime. Understand that this is something that not makes people active to work, right? So in our side, we say that people should be able to reap the benefits of their struggle. People should be able to live in a better society, because the being born to this world was not our choice, but dying in a world of our choosing should be something that should be available to everyone. And on that grounds, we're proposing. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the opening opposition and their case of procrastination. They told us procrastination is wrong, and because people have infinite time and no deadline pressure, people will not make progress. Understand, this idea of people having to work, this idea of success that is defined by society, all these are things that put psychological and emotional pressure on people, rob them of psychological or a life for themselves, right? It's not that somebody has to force me to study by sacrificing my time for play, because there's a success that is defined to me by society, and I have to sacrifice my individual happiness, my individual choice for that. So this idea of people having to sacrifice something, trading off their individual happiness for some other success that is not of their own definition, we say this is not something that is right. And so their idea of procrastination does not necessarily make sense. But more importantly, progress will still happen in our side, because the amount of knowledge that is not lost in our side because of people living forever, because those people who have knowledge will continue living. And will continue possessing that knowledge, and the time that people actually spend acquiring knowledge, that is 25 years of their lives, thinking about what they want to do in life, and a lot of amount of time rearing children, all these amount of time that is lost, and only a small amount of productive life is left for people. We say in our side of the house, because more people exist and have a lot of productive life, means that this will make it our world better, and people will be more progressive in our side. But more importantly, the time limit is non-existent, so people will be able to prioritize happiness, the time they want to spend with family versus time they want to spend working. And because of all these things, our world will be much better, because more individuals will be happy in our side, and on the grounds of individual happiness we should win this class. Also understand their idea of societal change, like that not happening because homosexual activism and human rights activism not taking place because people have rigid mentality, is something that we don't believe, because it's not people, it's ideas that need to change. Understand that ideas are going to evolve anyway, even in our side of the house, because of people having this agency of knowledge. Understand, when people are allowed to explore and take gap years, take time to understand other cultures, and not be forced to this indoctrined culture and tradition that people are forced in the status quo, means that people will be more likely to be liberal, right? They will be accepting of other ideas just because of the fact that they know these ideas exist, and because they have explored these ideas. In our world, they are more likely to explore just because they have more time. People will be more open-minded. So societal change will still happen in our side, and this is not a thing that is going to make the world stagnant, as they say. And we say because individuals are going to be more happy, societal change is going to happen anyway. So talking about the closing opposition's case about relationship, we believe that relationships should be something that people should make thinking about the present, right? Not about the future, like I'll be alone in 70s or 80s. That's not something that we choose. But more importantly, even if you think about future, that is not something that might happen, right? When you're 70, your partner might die. So this is not something that people make relationship because they want to be happy somewhere down the line. People make decisions because they want to be happy in the present. And in our side of the house, relationships will exist for that sake, for the sake that people are happy at the present and they want to continue that relationship. Our relationships will be real, not fake, because in our side of the house, relationships will exist for the sheer reason of their value being judged on the basis of happiness that is derived from them at the present. So what are the things that we talked about as extension? We talked about human being not being limited in their potential because of them having a lot of time. Understand that when people are small or little, they do not have a lot of money, a lot of resources, and they have to be taken care of. But as they grow old, in the capitalist structure, these people are forced to struggle all their lives to earn money, right? But when they have money at the old age, they do not have agency, they do not have life left in them, they lose certain aspects of their life. Understand, when we provide you a world where people can make money, prioritize capital at certain age, but still take gap years, still spend time with their family, take vacations. And because of this, what happens is we create a world where these people can plan for themselves, for their own future, right? They don't have to think about other things. And because of that, this world that we propose is going to be a lot happy. Whenever people struggle for change in our society, they will be able to see the change in their own lifetimes. So because of this visibility, agency of being able to see this change is going to make people in our side better activists, because these people are more likely to actually struggle more, right? So more people will join in our side in these struggles for equality, because they will be able, simply because they'll be able to see the change that they want to bring in society. And also we talked about why people realize this world in contrast, meaning that in our world people die, right? And because of that, people are not able to focus on important questions in life, like pursuing spiritual fulfillment. Understand that when people are forced to pursue capital and materialistic happiness that is not of their own definition, these people cannot pursue other important questions in life. These people are forced, and many people just because they were born somewhere are robbed of agency, and they are all their lives forced towards certain things. This makes them unequal, right? Because these people are not able to actually pursue similar things as compared to other people in society just because they were born in other places. We say this inequality will not exist in our side of the house. People all around the world will have infinite time to pursue these questions that really matter about their own fulfillment in spiritual level, about social justice, because that's more likely to happen in our side, because people will be able to actually see change in their lives. And environmental sustainability is something that too exists in our side, because people will be able to feel the harms of environmental failures in their own lifetimes, mean that these people will be able to do everything. But the most important thing is the idea of indoctrination, because families indoctrinating people is something that is wrong, right? And these ideas that they perceive from families, but in our world, people will be able to learn themselves, and because of that, society will progress more. People will be able to live happily in their own beliefs. On these grounds, we're proud to propose. Thank you.
I thank the government whip, and I now invite the last speaker of the House, the opposition whip, to give the final speech. Here.
I'll be starting in a few seconds, please.
Sure. Excuse me, Web, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just getting my timer to time myself. Okay, so thank you, Honorable Chair, for giving me the floor. I'll be starting with my rebuttals first. First of all, the closing government has just a few minutes back talked a lot about how gap years, how our current system of where the current generation is not immortal, makes kind of propagates the idea of not taking gap years, because you're missing out on time or something like that, right? Okay, when he's talking about, when he's saying such a thing, he's thinking about Bangladesh, the society in Bangladesh as a only. Think global. When you think about a global community, when you think about universities abroad, like Harvard College or Vassar College or Williams, they do understand that you can take a gap year. They do understand the fact that we, the younger generations, want to think about what we want to pursue in life, and what we basically want to spend the rest of our lives doing. So the argument of gap years, the argument about gap years is null and void, because this the understanding that we need gap years already exists in the global community, if not in Bangladesh. Hopefully, with time, it will be integrated in Bangladesh too. Okay, moving on. The opening government, the first speaker of the opening government, talked a lot about how the rush that the current generation is in leads to a lot of mental pressure, right? A lot of mental pressure, because they constantly have to be doing something. Okay, to that I say, this rush is what leads us to is what leads to motivation. The motivation to accomplish as much as you can in the limited time that you have. The motivation to do the best in your education, in your jobs, to try and get to the top of the institutional hierarchy. And if we make the current generation immortal, what will happen is that they won't enjoy their success anymore. If I'm whatever I do, whatever I accomplish, there's this more people doing that. And I'm going to forever have to live with that. So that I won't enjoy my success anymore, because I'll think that there's no limit, but the sky is the limit, but I'm not achieving the sky, right? So moving on from that point. Okay, so the closing government has talked a lot about how the individuals who has worked a lot should be able to reap their own benefits in their old age, right? The income they've earned, and they've saved up. Okay, to that I say, now in the current situation where we are still mortal, we are still where we still know that we are gonna die. what happens is that we still work our hearts off and we still save up. Because why? When we signed up for this job, when we choose the careers that we choose, what happens is that we already make that trade-off. We already know that I'm going to work for this corporation and I'm going to get this amount of money. I mean, it's not that while we do not enjoy our lives during the time we work. We do get paid reasonable amounts for it. We can enjoy our lives with that. We can pay for our basic necessities and for any luxuries that we can afford with that money. So when if you're talking about income and saving up and such things, we already have already signed up for the trade-off that I work for the organization, that organization gives me money, I enjoy my life with it. Moreover, both the opening government and the closing government has talked a lot about how there is a certain kind of defined success that exists in our society that leads us to choose certain careers over others, like artists or painting or such, right, or singing. Again, this is the kind of social conditioning. So if the current generation is allowed to live forever, this mentality will not change. This is something I believe the opening opposition has missed out on, or has missed out elaborating on. That is the mentality of the current generation, the social conditioning that we think that doctors and engineers are more successful than painters or such. That idea will not change, because why? It's the same society. It's the same people. I mean, just think about the older people, the elder citizens of our current society. Can you get them to believe what you believe easily? No, they are very dogmatic and they are very fixed in their own ways. Because why? That is how they have been brought up, and that is how they've lived their own lives. So if we're immortal, that won't change. And also, I would also like to say that the problems that exist in our current society, like racism and sexism, that I believe the first speaker from the closing opposition has also touched on, is that this kind of problems won't go away. Because why? It's the same society, there's the same mentality, it's the same feeling that we're hitting each time. If we continue this current society society forever, that thinking won't change. We won't be breaking barriers when it comes to societal advancement. Okay, so moving on. Acha. So sorry for that. The closing government has talked about how relationships are for the present and not for the future. When we form relationships, we do not think about the present we do not think about the future and rather focus on the present, right? If we did not see a happy future with that person, we would not have invested ourselves emotionally in the first place. I mean, the whole point of forming relationships with person, for example, when you start dating, it is because we see a happy future with that person. We see that in not just I'll not just be happy for this 1 week or this 1 month. I'll be happy for the for years to come with this person, because I don't know because of certain reasons. So the whole point of forming relationships is for the long run and not just for immediate gratification. Again, also this I would like to add another point here, which is when we know that we have limited time, and we won't be with the person that we won't be with the people that we love forever, we tend to value our relationships more. We try to we gain more emotional fulfillment. For example, this does not just extend to romantic relationships. This also extends to our time that we spend with our parents. We tend to value our parents more and more as they grow old. Why? Because we know that they're not going to be there forever. They're going to pass away sometime. So that is why we tend to be more emotionally fulfilled with it. Okay, so moreover, I believe the other speaker has talked about this too, that we have no right to eliminate the future generations, because we have no idea who can be in the next generation. Who knows, the next Einstein, the next Michael Jackson can be in that generation. But if we eliminate it, we never know. Moreover, our world is not the best, because there is no best. I mean, if we eliminate the possibilities of new generations, we eliminate the chance for them to learn from our mistakes and continually improve themselves. So if we eliminate them, we agree that our world is the best, so there is no room for improvement, which is wrong. There are so many problems with our world, which both I and the other speaker has talked about. Moreover, I believe there is one rebuttal that I haven't addressed yet. I believe the government side has talked about how the people who are currently doing research can continue the research and whatnot. However, in the past, in the history, there are a lot of cases where when new contributors have joined the research and made scientific breakthroughs. So if you eliminate the next generation, it does not happen anymore. That is completely eliminated. So you do not contribute to continual improvement of our human race. Okay, so with that, I would like to conclude by saying that this time limit that we have leads us to accomplish as much as we can, and to value our relationships as much as we can, because we know that we won't be here forever, and because of this and all the reasons stated before, we believe that the closing opposition wins this debate. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution to the debate. Please try to stay on time and check the Grand Auditorium Technolog. That being said, I would ask you, both sides, to cross floors and shake hands digitally. Thank you for being part of the digital revolution, and I congratulate each and every team for making it to the finals. But the judges will be leaving and deliberating in a separate channel. We'll announce the victors later, so stay tuned.
Just stay in the room. Don't go anywhere. Okay, just stay in the room. Come back.
You guys are so good. Congrats to everyone.
you.